Well, here we are back in SQL Server Management Studio. And previously we saw how to create a table, and we're going to create another table now. And I just want to pay a little bit more attention to the data types of the columns in this table. So we're creating a table called dbo.accountmanagers. The first column is the employee ID that identifies each of my account manager employees. And that's an integer, so it's a whole number that I'm creating there. Then I've got a first name, which is a varchar. A variable length character is what varchar means. And because it's var and not nvarchar, what we're saying is this supports the ASCII character set. So that kind of standard set of English language characters that can be stored in that. Then we've got a last name column which supports nvarchar. So again, it's a variable length character, it's a string, but this time because of the n at the beginning, we're supporting Unicode or wide characters. So that more extended character set that supports some characters that might exist in languages other than English. So perhaps kanji characters or something like that. We've got the date of birth, which is a date. Now there are various different ways of storing temporal values. You can have dates and date time, which would store the date and the time. This is specifically just the date for the date of birth. And we've got a salary which has a decimal value in here. So we're storing a decimal value in here that has 10 digits supported altogether with 2 decimal places. So it's going to be accurate to 2 decimal places with 10 digits. So let's go ahead and run that create table statement. And that creates my table. And we'll insert some values into the account manager. So I'm inserting into here Lucas Sondergaard, and you can see that there are some characters in here. These are actually regular ASCII characters, so it wouldn't matter if it was varchar or nvarchar, but just to make the point, we can insert different characters into here. And I've got my date in here, and look, the date is actually in quotes. I'm treating it like a string, so I've got 1971-03-07. Which is the 1971, the next thing is the month, so that's March 7th, 1971. And the salary that I'm putting in there is 92,000. So let's go ahead and insert that. And that all works as expected. We get our row inserted into the table. Well, let's have a look at Rosie Reeves. We're going to insert Rosie Reeves into here. And this time the date format's slightly different. I've got 12/12/1988, so it's in a different format. But SQL Server will still recognize that as a date. And I've got my value here, which is a decimal, but I've left off the decimal places here. So it's just a whole number that I've put. So I've actually entered an integer, is really what I've done there. But it can be treated as a decimal. We just assume that it's 0.00 that's going to go on the end of that. So I go ahead and do that, and that inserts that quite happily. Well, here's another one. This time I'm going to try and insert Diana. And instead of a last name, I've actually put a number here. We're going to assume that Diana has a last name that's actually a number, 8411. And we'll see what happens if we try and insert that. And actually, that succeeds. So we've got this number here. You might have been expecting that to fail and throw an error, but it doesn't, because all that happens is SQL Server says, well, you've missed out the quotes, but I'm just going to treat that as a string. So I'm going to take in that as a string of characters. I can't do any calculations with it because it's not actually going to store a number in the table. It's going to store the string 8411. It'll treat it as an nvarchar in this case. So here's another thing. I'm going to insert into my account managers Aisha Witt, and I've got a date there. And notice that I've got the number here, the salary, but I've prefixed it with a dollar symbol. So I've actually put the symbol for the currency that I'm putting in there, and we might expect that to fail because that's not technically a number. I've put a bit of a character in there. But actually, it's quite happy with that. SQL Server recognizes that as being a symbol that goes with numbers, so it just treats it as a decimal number. Now let's try and get a little more creative. I'm going to insert into here Elwood McGee with a date, and this time I've specified the salary as a string with the dollar symbol. So I've put it in quotes, so it treats it like a varchar value there, and I've put the dollar symbol in there. Now so far it's accepted numbers where we should be storing strings. Let's see if it will accept a string where we want to store a number. And in this case it fails. It says I can't convert the data type varchar to numeric. So because we've got that as a string value in there, and we're trying to insert it into a numeric column, it's a decimal column, SQL Server at that point says, well, no, that doesn't fit into that column, so there's an error there. Well, let's try and be a little bit more clever. Let's try and insert it as a string, but this time we won't include the dollar symbol. So we've inserted it without the quotes with the dollar symbol, and that worked. We've tried to insert it with quotes and a dollar symbol, and that didn't work. If we had tried to insert a string value, but we're only including numbers in that string, only numerals, we haven't got any symbols in there. Well, let's see what's going to happen. I'm just going to try and select that properly. There we go. And we'll run that. And that actually works. So again, SQL Server automatically does the conversion for me. It knows that this thing is meant to be a number. It has a look at what's in the string. It doesn't find anything odd. It doesn't find any strange symbols. So it just goes ahead and converts it. So sometimes you'll get perhaps slightly unexpected behavior when SQL Server automatically does these conversions of data types. And again, I'm going to insert into my value here. I'm going to insert Zachary Fellows. And the date format here is 30/7/1978. Now you can probably tell from my accent that where I come from, that's a perfectly valid date. That's the 30th of July 1978. But because my instance of SQL Server has been set up as if it were in the United States, it obeys all the rules for United States formatting for dates. And in the US, we do things the other way around. We have the month and then the day. So actually, I would have to change that to 7/30 in order to say the 30th of July. So there is some consideration that you have to make when it comes to how you format things like dates. It might be dependent on the region that your SQL Server is set up to support. And we'll just go ahead just to verify that all that data is now in there. If I go and bring back all of the rows from that table, I can see all of that data is in there. I can see that the dates are given to me in that standard sort of format here where you've got the year, then the month, and the day. That's the default that gets displayed when we bring that back. Now, I could do things like try and bring back the employee ID plus the salary. You might remember previously we did a query where we concatenated some strings together. This time we're using the plus symbol, but we've got two numeric columns here. I've got an integer employee ID and a decimal salary. So the query itself is nonsensical. We're adding the employee ID to the salary, but it will actually work because these two things are numbers. So it can add two numbers together. If I use the same thing with first name and last name, where the two things are character data, they're not numbers. Again, it works, but this time the plus is used to do something different. It's used to concatenate, so it concatenates the first name to the last name. Well, what happens if I try and add the first name and the salary? This time, one of these things is a character, one of these things is a number. So let's have a look at that. And this time we get an error. It doesn't concatenate it, it doesn't add it, we just get an error that says, hey, look, you've tried to do an operation involving a varchar and a numeric, and what it's trying actually to do is to treat it as an addition. It's saying, well, we can't convert the data type varchar to numeric. You've tried to add a string to a number, and I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to allow that. What if I tried date of birth to employee ID? Date of birth is a date, employee ID is an integer. Let's try that. And again, I get an operand type clash, slightly different error, but date is incompatible with int. Right, so these two things are not compatible data types. What if I try and add first name and date of birth? So this time a string and a date. And again, I get an error that says the types varchar and date are incompatible in the add operator. So it's trying to add them, and it's not able to do that because of those data types. So really what we've done here is we've just taken a look at some of the things just to be aware of when you're specifying the data types for the columns in your tables. Sometimes SQL Server will automatically convert between different data types if it makes sense to do so. Other times it might throw an error because you're trying to do something that's ambiguous, or it's incompatible to try and add strings and numbers or that type of thing. So be very aware when you choose the data types for your column that you choose an appropriate data type for the data that you're going to store there and for the operations that you're going to perform on it.